All right, this is my third attempt to make a video here today, and we'll see how it goes at this point. So, some remedy. Why it's not actually fraud. When dealing in the public side, there are always remedies. It's a matter of whether or not you're cognitive enough to comprehend and understand what's happening. All right? So, what are some of the remedies on the public side of the venue, right? So notice an opportunity, due process of law, the fact that you can either be a process server or a witness, but you cannot be both simultaneously. That's why the post office can be nothing more than a witness. That's why your notary can be nothing more than a process server and a witness to the fact that the process service had been executed and testify with firsthand knowledge of the facts of what they have done. But they can never be a witness to what was actually sent out as far as the facts in evidence in the documentation, right? So we got to be able to create that separation to comprehend what I'm talking about, because the fact of the matter is the officer on the side of the road issuing you a citation, a ticket, which is really a securities instrument under CFR 277211, all crimes, quote unquote, statute, code, city ordinance, rule, regulation are violations, which are financial in nature, period, end of story, on the public side, okay? The other thing is, what you're really doing in that court when dealing with a traffic violation is they're alleging that it's somehow criminal, when in all actuality it's civil because of the contract that was signed on the side of the road. How do we defeat that contract on the side of the road that says that we allegedly owe something, right? When Title 18, subsection 8 clearly articulates that there is nothing in the economy in the United States is responsible for everything dollar for dollar, period, end of story. And that pertains to House Joint Resolution 192, Public Law 73, 310, statute 4848, 112, I believe. And you can go down that diatribe of code, statutes, public law, public statutes at large, and you can find everything that I'm talking to you about. Now, in legal land, they constantly manipulate the situation because all they have to do is, in order to provide remedy, is give notice. And notice doesn't have to be given to you via the news channel, but it's actually written in books, and various sections of the books, of the code, is where your remedy is found on the public side of things, okay? In the private, it's a whole different animal. It's glorious. It's absolutely beautiful. And the thing about equity is, we already have it written on our hearts, ladies and gentlemen. A quick, short little story here. I had a friend when I was very, very young, who's still a good, dear friend to me today, a brother really, who was never raised that stealing was wrong. And everybody in the neighborhood and community told me, oh, Derek, if you hang around that guy, you're going to end up with things missing. His whole family is nothing but thieves. Now, I know this man was never raised not to steal, or that stealing was wrong, but innately in his heart, he knew that it didn't belong to him, so he didn't take. Right? And because of my experience with this, I am led to believe that everybody's got good in them. And it doesn't necessarily have to be spanked into you or sternly disciplined into you, but because it's already written on your heart, ladies and gentlemen. That's how simple it is. It's written on your heart. Don't steal. Don't take what doesn't belong to you. Don't covet thy neighbor's wife. Don't lust over the materialistic things they have in this world. Right? Because we're not supposed to be of this world. We're on earth, but we are not of this world, okay? And the world being the legal aspect of it, okay? So when we look at the Unum Sanctum, 1666, and we actually read it and digest it mentally, what is it, okay? They created a trust. They mimicked our Heavenly Father. And they alleged that the reason that they were doing such activity was not to be nefarious in any way, shape, or form, but for the betterment of mankind in the absence of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, and our Father in heaven, right? And so naturally, when they create these things, they always make it sound really, really good. So the populace of the world will naturally adopt it. And then through time, latches occurs, and it's something that we've just done for years. Derek, this has been going on for centuries. It's not going to change now. You're not going to change it ever. Just go along to get along with it. That's what they want you to do. Because as long as you're subservient to them, then you can't truly be subservient to the Father, okay? The authority, the author of everything, making he the master, right? So back to explaining trust just a little bit and why it's so important to comprehend. In Genesis, when it talks about dominion, you'll notice dominion isn't the first thing that's mentioned in Genesis. In fact, it's not even the second thing that's mentioned in Genesis, okay? First, there was the creation of the estate. The second was the creation of man, right? And then the third was the creation of the beneficiary who has dominion. Dominion doesn't mean that we own it, ladies and gentlemen. We are merely caretakers, trustees of this heavenly creation, because you can find heaven on earth as you can find heaven above, right? So above, so below. That's the ticket. That's the eyes to see and the ears to hear, ladies and gentlemen, is to realize that we create our own hell. For our lack of knowledge, we shall suffer. And it tells us in that good book, my people will suffer for their lack of knowledge. And that's exactly what we have transpiring here today. Now, I can affirm and testify with firsthand knowledge because of the experiences that I've had in their synagogues. And make no mistake about it, they are privately owned synagogues for profit on the public side, period. Okay? But in that same synagogue, a man can invoke the exclusive jurisdiction of equity, comprehending the hierarchy of law, true law, the highest law on the land. And I will challenge anybody, any legal scholar, and any lawyer, any judge to come on and debate this with me, or make an argument to it, or argue if they shall dare. The highest law on the land is trust law, period. Without trust, you have nothing. No society, no nothing. You just as well be primitive cavemen. Without trust, there's nothing. So let me help you bring a little clarity to your mind about what actual is trust. Going to the doctor is a trust relationship. Dropping your offspring off at a public school setting is a trust relationship. Having a joint bank account with your esposa or your spouse is a trust relationship. Ladies and gentlemen, there isn't anything that we do today that doesn't involve a trust, okay? And partly due to the fact that in 1933, everything was taken away from the people in their ability to actually pay. Now remember, gold and silver is found to be good in the good book. It is also reflected in the American Constitution, Article 1, Section 10, where it says a debt cannot be paid without gold or silver as a form of tender of payment, period, and shall be minted by the U.S. Mint. When's the last time you've seen gold or silver in a paper form? Okay. The paper is nothing more than a receipt. It's symbolism. Okay. People keep looking at the silver certificates going, I've got real money. It's not real money, ladies and gentlemen. That is a certificate, a receipt. Now, I want you to comprehend this. At the top of every document that the alleged government puts out, there's always a header. The header tells you what the instrument is. And when we look at the silver certificate versus the Federal Reserve note, on the top of the silver certificate, it tells you exactly what it is. It's a silver certificate, a receipt for something physically tangible. Shall you bring that in to any Federal Reserve branch, one of the 12, or any Federal Reserve affiliate, or the Treasury for the United States of America, and redeem it for its weight in silver? So the silver certificate is not actually money, ladies and gentlemen. It is a receipt for actual money, okay? And I tend to use them on my legal documents because they have a serial number attached to them. And when you learn about trust law and equity, it's the intent. It's the intent that creates the law, all right? The intent of our Father was to live harmoniously amongst our fellow men and do good works. To aspire to be great, to help our neighbor, and the law is very eloquently written. There's 10 of them, but there's one that holds true above all else, and it's not even written in the good book, but innately you can derive from reading the 10 laws that are substantially and firmly placed in that book that there's really only one law, and that is do no harm to your neighbor. Do no harm. Period. To anybody for any reason. Do no harm. The good Lord tells us that he will take care of the inequities. Bring thy adversary to his feet so he can rest his feet on their inequities. That's what we're supposed to be doing. That's why we're supposed to forgive those who trespass against us, for they know not what they do. And the question is, why do they know not what they do? Because we haven't properly informed them of who we are. And I can affirm that through the Cestui Que Vie Act of 1666 that clearly outlines that they are trustees of the estate in the absence of the beneficiary. In the absence of the beneficiary, we're to come forward and let them know our good name, who we are, what we're doing, and that we're back, ladies and gentlemen. So you ask yourself, who do we communicate with, let's say, in America, on Turtle Island, whatever you want to identify it as. This rock that I stand upon has been called many things throughout generations, okay? So when we look at it, who are we going to notify? Well, who is part of this system? You have the Vatican, it's a trifecta. You have the Vatican, you have Europe, and you have the United States. The United States, not to be confused with the United States of America. The United States I speak of is a corporation founded in Title 28, 3002, 15A. Now, every agency that operates in your alleged state of, which I call state of confusion because that's what they have effectively done. They have mirrored and mimicked everything that should have been and perverted it with their legalese. Okay, so who are we going to contact? How do we make that assessment and that adjustment? Everybody talks about status correction. Status correction is very simple, ladies and gentlemen. There's no magic form that creates status correction. You can do your Form 56s and everything else. Understand that's on the public side, not the private. But the private is very simple. The private is very simple, ladies and gentlemen. If I say that I am not a U.S. citizen, it also equally affirms that if I'm not a U.S. citizen, the things that I didn't eliminate, I can be. Right? So instead of saying, I am a citizen of the United States of America, or I'm a citizen of Arizona, which makes me an Arizonian national, instead of limiting my capacity, I simply just say what I am not. I am not a U.S. citizen. And I stand firm on that. And the reason I say that is because then I can fill any other capacity that I feel necessary to execute the good works that I've been put here to do. Right? So we make very limited statements and we could just simply say what we're not. But who are we going to tell that we're not U.S. citizens, right? Well, I took it upon myself to go ahead and let the Queen of England know. I took it upon myself to go ahead and let the Pope know. I took it upon myself to write the DOD, the Secret Service, all in Washington, D.C., mind you. Washington, D.C. is not part of the United States of America. Although it's connected to the landmass, in legal land, in the fictional realm, it is its own sovereign nation, ladies and gentlemen, with its own little mini dictators over their corporation. So what that means is that all of the lower states, okay, all the 50 states, state of, which I call the state of confusion, are actually subsidiary corporations of Title 28, 3002, 15A, which is Washington, D.C., a 10 square mile area. It is a giant supercenter, ladies and gentlemen. It's a giant Walmart without walls. In fact, all it has is 4 pillars on 10 square mile area that indicate where their territory begins. Now, what gave them the ability to venture outside of the District of Columbia? Who colored them with that authority? Well, let me show you how it works. It works like this. You end up signing up for, let's say, a driver's permit at the age of 15. You have just granted the agents and agency from Washington, D.C. to intervene in your life, okay? And they never told you about that because you would have never given up your unalienable rights to contract and pay a license and a fee for a right that you already have, right? And secondly, how did you pay for it? FRN notes don't constitute a payment, ladies and gentlemen. They're instruments of debt. And Franklin Delano Roosevelt told us this in his inaugural speech. Not only that, Woodrow Wilson, in one of his famous quotes, states, "I single-handedly destroyed the country I love so much." Okay, with the Federal Reserve Banking Act of 1913 that was created in 1910 on Jekyll Island. These are just some fundamental basics, ladies and gentlemen, that you have to be able to wrap your head around. I'm just here planting seeds today. At selfgovernanceu.com, we do a lot more. I'm getting ready to make my library accessible to all the members that are part of selfgovernanceU.com. And you want to talk about a phenomenal library. This thing is exquisite. I wish I would have had it when I first started, because the material that has been gathered by myself and so many others over the last 10 years in my instance, and some of the people that have bestowed knowledge upon me in literature have been at this for 40 to 50 years and are very, very efficient at what they do. They just don't wish to be public. What we do is dangerous coming forward, and trying to help others. And recently there was some tragic events that transpired due to a good man trying to help somebody else who felt that they weren't helping them enough, or however it may be. And unfortunately, he met his untimely demise while helping so many others. So this is very dangerous what people are doing to help awaken you guys. It's not a game. It's not a joke. Okay. We, the people that have become learned, who have ascended of the mind, are not supposed to be freeing the slaves. We're supposed to leave everybody else alone. Okay. That's why the NDAs are put in place. That's why they ask you at a certain point, hey, we'll give you everything you want. You know what you're doing. Sign this. And you read it, and it says that I will no longer make Facebook videos. I will no longer make YouTube videos. I will no longer do TikTok. I will no longer announce to the people of the world what's really going on. See, because they have to provide remedy. If they don't provide remedy, it is fraud, and every last one of them can be hung for high treason. They can all be euthanized, ladies and gentlemen. There's a delicacy about what's going on here. Okay? It tells you in the good book, 12,000 tribes, 144,000 tribes of 12,000 people will know the truth. That's very, very, very slim margins when you realize there's over 9 billion people on the planet, allegedly. Okay? So it's very, very small amount of people that actually have this acquired knowledge. And it's not something that's freely taught. You have to do the research and ascend to the mind on your own. You will be the only one going through your trials and tribulations. You will be the only one standing through the fire by trial, okay? You get baptized by fire, water, and ice. And that's the reality of it. Most people only think you get baptized by water. It couldn't be further from the truth. Water is so pleasant. You got to go through the fire. You've got to have been burned a few times to ascend to the mind, to really realize what's going on here. And know this, that if you're attached to earthly things, to worldly things, to materialistic shit, I'm going to tell you right now, you're going to struggle in this. You have to lose it all to enter the kingdom of heaven. It is not free, ladies and gentlemen. It comes with trials, tribulations, struggle, adversity, and eventually triumph through He, the Heavenly Father. Now, the library that I have is so extensive. It doesn't just go into equity. It doesn't just go into negotiable instruments. We're talking about Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, Magna Carta. All of this stuff plays a part in where we are today and may help you ascend of the mind. Now, do any of those documents really help you out? Depends where you're at in the world, but I will tell you this. It's a trifecta that runs the whole thing. The whole shit show is based upon a hypotheticated trust created by the Vatican. And you can't serve two masters. It tells us this in the good book. We can't do it, right? So you either serve Mammon or you serve God. You serve the Most High, and you have to be able to consciously be able to see which is what. So when I look at the court system, when I go in there and they say, you don't know the law, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt honor thy mother and father, thou shalt have no other God above thy God, okay? Thou shalt not commit murder. Thou shalt not commit adultery. And I love this one because this one is the showstopper, ladies and gentlemen. And I like to look at everybody in the court when I say it. I like to do a 360 roundabout to the peanut gallery, the district attorney, the judge, the clerk of the court, the stenographer. I like to make eye contact with every last one because this one is the linchpin. Thou shalt not bear false witness against their fellow brothers and sisters. Need I say more, or shall I digress? I'm certain I know the law. If you'd like, I can continue. It's a showstopper, ladies and gentlemen. Why? Because what they're doing in there is bearing false witness, worshiping false idols, okay? Everything that we're not supposed to be a part of, they're doing. And we're entering into it thinking that we know something. And the more we know, the less we know, ladies and gentlemen. And the more we know, the more they expect, right? And the more that you try to yammer on about the things you know, the more evident it is that you don't know anything. You don't know anything. And then they threaten you. That document right there is fraud, and if you don't remove that from the record, we're going to have you thrown in jail. What's the next thing that happens when you remove that you remove that document from the record? See, they need your consent to remove it. When you remove that document from the record, you just admitted to fraud. You just said that you didn't write it. You just said that it had no power, no authority, no weight, and that you put it on the record, which is fraud upon the court. And the proof of fraud upon the court is the fact that when you were threatened with incarceration, you got scared, you lost your conviction, and you retracted or redacted that document, and now they're going to say fraud upon the court, ladies and gentlemen. That's fraud upon the court. Show a cause why you shouldn't go to jail for 30 days for contempt for trying to deceive this court. See, it tells you in that good book, another fact is that you stand with conviction. No matter what the outcome be, you stand with conviction, and during your trial by fire, you never waver from my good word. You never lack faith and belief in me, for I am all-powerful, all-knowing, almighty, and if you walk with me, he doesn't say you won't struggle, he doesn't say you won't suffer, he says if you stay with me with conviction, we will walk through this together. I will take you to the other side. As above, so below. Heaven and hell do exist on earth. I watch people live it every day. So this library that I have, that I'm so adamant about, has hundreds of thousands of documents, books, literature, for whatever topic you want to study. You want to study negotiable instruments? I got it. You want to study banking? I got it. You want to study ecclesiastical law? I got it. You want to study canon law? I got it. You want to understand how these judges operate and what their first true oath is to? Their first true oath is not to Bala Bala, but to God as a high Baal priest, ladies and gentlemen, but you have to change that jurisdiction. So let's talk about some remedies here. Some of the quick, short, fast remedies. When the state of confusion is bringing an allegation or a charge against you, the first thing you want to invoke is your unalienable right to face your accuser, right? Who's accusing me? Validate your claim, please. Have it sworn to under the pains and penalties of perjury, which is a legal term, because in being lawful, my yes is yes and my no be no. It's that simple. It is because I say it is, unless there's somebody here that's going to clearly object and have facts and evidence to say otherwise, right? So one of your remedies is going to the clerk and asking 3 times to speak to the magistrate. Why would you want to speak to the magistrate? Well, let's see. The magistrate is really the whole ball of wax on the public side. It's not the judge. The judge is just an actor. It's not the prosecutor. The prosecutor is just an actor on behalf of the state. Who's the Iron Man behind the curtain or the emperor with no clothes? It's the clerk of the court, ladies and gentlemen, who has brought a claim for which relief cannot be granted, nor should the claim even be before the court, because the truth of the matter is there's no injured party. There's no affiant stating harm, injury, damage, or loss, willing to verify that with firsthand testimony, testifying under the pains and penalty of perjury, right? And because of that, this cause of action is now dismissed for a frivolous claim for which relief cannot be granted. With absent an injured party, there's no crime, ladies and gentlemen. Absent a contract, there's no cause of action. And in order to have a contract, the contract must be knowingly, willfully, and intentionally entered into, with full disclosure had, must be a mutual ascension of the minds, and all parties involved, it must be mutually beneficial for. Full disclosure should have been had, right? Must be had, not should have, must be had, in order to have a binding contract. At what point did you have an ascension of the mind with the state of confusion? You didn't. You couldn't. It's an impossibility, ladies and gentlemen. It is that simple. So, again, join us at selfgovernanceU.com. I hope this helps you out a little bit. Again, more with the clerk of the court. When we asked to see the affidavit from the affiant, which is all fictional, that's all in legal land, ladies and gentlemen. The affiant is a fiction. The affidavit is from a dead entity. It's not living. That's what I like about asservations. Asservations is something a man who's alive and well, with life does, right? An affidavit is something that comes from the dead. These are all fictions, and you have to be able to identify those fictions. But when the clerk of the court cannot produce the affidavit stating a man or woman being harmed, injured, damaged, or lost under the pains and penalties of perjury and independently bonded with a hazard bond, just in case they bring a false claim against you that causes you harm, damage, injury, and loss and gives you the opportunity to be made whole. Absent of those facts, not being on the record, ladies and gentlemen, and to further my point, let's just say there is a bond, which there never is. They never put up a bond. They use you to put up the bond. They use your ignorance. Let's just say there is a bond on record. The bond naturally should be placed with the defendant and counsel to be placed in escrow. See, you want to bring a claim, there needs to be a quid pro quo in order here. I don't mind you bringing your claim because, again, there's only two ways to remain in honor. Conditionally accept the allegations and pay the alleged debt, or conditionally accept upon proof of claim. I like conditionally accepting upon proof of claim. Of course, if I hadn't entered into contract and know that I owe an obligation, right? If I entered into a contract and I owe an obligation, I don't want it to go to court. It's a waste of everybody's time. There's other pressing issues that could be before the court. I don't want to waste anybody's time. So if I owe, it's a matter of, on the private side, sending communications, acknowledging that fact, saying, hey, I'd like to provide remedy. This is what I can do so as not to harm my family or anybody else. This is what I can do to remedy the situation. Unless you have another means for me to be able to rectify this situation and provide remedy. Remedy equate to rights, and rights remedy. That's all it is. If you have a remedy, it's a right, ladies and gentlemen. And so it's a matter of trying to handle it amicably on the private side so as to stay out of the court system, okay? If you can do that, and you can show that you tried to settle this on the private side, and yet the respondent never responds back. For example, the state of Nebraska never responds back, ladies and gentlemen, then you can close the court case merely on principle alone. That you tried to provide remedy. You did a conditional acceptance to the state of Nebraska. Mr. and Mrs. State of Nebraska never responded in a proper, efficient time. We gave them 10 days to respond, and they just didn't write back. They didn't want to testify with firsthand knowledge because, well, let's be honest, the prosecutor can't even find the state, ladies and gentlemen. That's a presumption and assumption. Maybe Mr. and Mrs. State is out there. Maybe they are. Maybe they're not. Could it be that they are out there? They just don't want to come forward? Perhaps. But the fact remains that by providing due process of law and offering to remedy the situation without getting any correspondence back clearly articulates that nobody's making a claim. There's a remedy right there in itself. That's on the private side. So back to the clerk of the court. When the clerk of the court can't bring forward the affidavit, all she has is charges, right? And charges have to be what? Paid. But the only way to pay under Title 18, subsection 8, House Joint Resolution 192, Public Law 48, Stat 48-112, Public Law 7310, the only way it could be paid is to offset discharge the matter, the issue, right? But where did that source of credit come from? In order to offset and discharge, who was pledged as the bailor for the bailee before birth? Where do you think that futures market comes from, ladies and gentlemen? They're pledging your future offspring's energy, which is the true value, the true source of energy for the future, right? When we're dealing in commerce, that's what's really happening. That's what the birth certificate is. People call it a bill of lading, a warehouse receipt, and although many of these things are true, no statement can be more true than this. That certificate is a bailment certificate, signifying that you are the bailee for the that you are the bailor for the bailee, which is the United States, and that subsidiary corporations, state of confusion, or state of Nebraska, state of Colorado, state of Utah. See, the Republic form is Nebraska state, Arizona state. All they did was change a few things. The Jesuits are very, very, very brilliant people. For example, I can come as Derek Gonzalez, or I can be Derek Gonzalez, or I am Derek Gonzalez. If I come as Derek Gonzalez, am I Derek Gonzalez? That's the little things they do. They manipulate the language, and we don't hear it properly or don't compute it and register it correctly. If I come in as Derek Gonzalez, am I Derek Gonzalez? If I come in as Caterpillar, as State of Nebraska, am I State of Nebraska? No, I'm not. Can you be a name? That's another great topic and a great point to make. All this stuff you can find in my library. And the people that have joined selfgovernanceU.com are going to have access to it here in the next few days. We've been working diligently. And again, the donation for it just goes to maintaining the library, keeping it up, and keeping relevant information in there. That's all the donation is for. And it's for a lifetime membership to the library. So as I update it, as I change it, as I evaluate credible intel and information and with firsthand knowledge and experience from other participants, those documents and their perseverance through their fires, through their trials by fire will be added to the library as well, of course, with their consent and permission. So just a lot of brilliant stuff within this library, ladies and gentlemen, that will help you ascend to the mind. Again, read that good book. It's the original book on trust. It has all the laws in it, and it's an original banking manual. Do you think Jesus Christ turning over the money changers' tables in the synagogues is just a storyline or a euphemism? Look at it a little closer. What's on the other side of the table? That's right, the private side of the ledger, ladies and gentlemen. But you can't see that until you ascend to the mind to realize what Jesus was doing in those synagogues by turning over the money changers' tables. What are the bankers today? They're money changers, ladies and gentlemen. They're sucking out your life substance and energy for frivolous, worthless paper and not giving you anything of intrinsic value at all. And alleging that everything is now owned by them. How do you own something when everything that you produce is worthless? It's worthless. So how are they getting it? How are they ascertaining all this alleged property, real estate, land, and so forth? Through our ignorance, through our unwillingness to become educated and read. So I'll see you guys soon at selfgovernanceU.com. And I really appreciate all your support, all your participation. Looks like the sun's shining here, so I'm going to get back to, my agreement, my fair trade and even exchange with the gentleman, and continue to do what he's asked of me at this point, weather permitting. So thanks again for joining me. Look forward to seeing you at selfgovernanceU.com. Again, I'm going to release my library to the participating members in selfgovernanceU.com. It's all beautifully, articulately laid out in sections and in folders, so you can download it. There's a number of people that have already acquired it, just raving reviews about it. Again, the donation for it is for nothing more than for me maintaining and upkeeping the library. That's it. And it's for a lifetime. I would encourage you to download it all onto a hard drive and store it offline in case you never have internet or whatever the case may be. You'll always have this library with you. And again, thanks for all your support, all your perseverance, all your stories of your own trials and tribulations. I learned so much from each and every one of you. It's not even funny. I learned from people that are down in Arkansas, Missouri, Kansas, Iowa, even the most ignorant of men you can learn from. So pay attention. Listen, because God speaks through everybody, ladies and gentlemen. Don't disregard people based upon their looks. I've had a lot of comments. Derek, if you were more well-dressed and suited up when you went in to talk to these public officials, maybe you'd get a little further. Ladies and gentlemen, it's not about that. It doesn't matter if I'm a snaggletooth hunchback with one eye. Shouldn't make an iota of difference, because the fact of the matter is my rights stop where yours begin and vice versa. Okay? And all of our rights are even across the board. You don't have constitutional rights, ladies and gentlemen. That's the biggest misconception and misnomer I've ever heard in my life. And I myself was guilty of once thinking that way. So a judge asked me one time, he says, Derek, are you ready for me to read your rights? And I said, oh, this is going to get good. And he goes, excuse me? And I said, well, I don't know that we have enough time in the year for you to read me my rights, but... And he says, well, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm going to read these rights to you, and you just need to say whether or not you understand them. Well, I have a right to urinate, masticate, masturbate, defecate. I have a right to ride a bicycle, breathe, die. I have a right to do a lot of things, Judge. What rights are we going to talk about? We're just going to talk about the specific rights that I'm going to read to you. Those are the only ones that are going to matter today, and whether or not you're going to waive those rights. Ladies and gentlemen, they can't do anything without you waiving your rights. You have to waive them voluntarily. Now, the interesting thing about rights is you can't sell them, you can't buy them, but you can contract them away. Isn't that amazing? You can, by consent, waive your rights, because that, again, lends to free will. And you have to be cognitive of these things so you don't accidentally or by mistake waive your rights. Your rights are so precious. They're so precious they were given to you by the divine creator, and they should be held to such a high standard that every one of your offspring should know their unalienable rights. Okay? Now, nowhere is it written in any book that you have a right to breathe, right? But you know that you have that right. In fact, if somebody was trying to put a pillow over your mouth, you would fight for that right to breathe, right? Nowhere is it written. So just know this. Over 99% of your rights are not written, ladies and gentlemen. You have to bring them into fruition. You have to tell them how it is. So in America, you're going to be communicating with the White House, the president, the Secretary of State, the Department of State, the DOD, the Secret Service, the FBI, the CIA, the DOJ. These are the entities you're communicating with to let them know that their hellhounds are out here operating under false and fictitious, unregistered DBAs. They don't have their oath of office on person. They're not independently bonded. They're not sharing their 3 forms of ID so you can bring a private administrative claim against them. You don't think that these lawyers and barristers tell these people and teach them and instruct them not to give you information? Why do you think that is? At this point, we're becoming so learned, they're now telling officers of the alleged law, policy enforcers, don't put anything in your name. If you put something in your name because you're not independently bonded, they can take everything from you. So put it in your uncle's name. Put it in your wife's name. Put it in somebody else's name but your own. The wife thing really doesn't work because they're co-conspiring, and they're not even co-conspiring. What happens is they're unjustly enriching themselves, and because they're unjustly enriching themselves, they become a beneficiary after the fact of the alleged crime. I say alleged. We all know it's a crime, but it's alleged only until you can prove it, right? So even after the fact, and I sent a letter to Governor Pete Ricketts one time. I was pretty pissed off. And, they're coming after me over this child support thing. And after I realized all the contracts that are involved and that each public official is actually unjustly enriching themselves at my peril, at my suffering, right? Which suffering is voluntarily administered. And so once you become learned, you realize that you're not suffering at all, because to suffer means that you are willfully allowing it to occur. So I do my research, I do my due diligence, and I put the governor on notice, Petey Ricketts. I said, Petey Ricketts, here's the deal. Your wife's an accessory after the fact. You're unjustly enriching yourself, and she's benefiting from it. So she will be involved in the suit that I bring as well, for her unjust enrichment as well. She's aiding and abetting a criminal. She's cooking for him. She's receiving the benefits from the crimes that are being arbitrated against I as a man, that for which no contractual nexus exists. So once we start to ascend to the mind, we learn how to communicate. We're looking for compensation. We're looking for the right to remedy. All right. That's what we're looking for. Remedy, ladies and gentlemen. So when we go into a court, there are no facts in dispute. I waive all benefits without God. Why do I waive all benefits without God? Because if they didn't come from God, they came from man. And if man giveth, man can taketh away. Does that make sense? Does that resonate with you guys? Is that helping you ascend to the mind? Think about this. If man giveth, man can taketh away. If God giveth life, and God taketh life. All right? And he also gives you the strength to stand on firm, solid principles and do the right thing. We're supposed to be doing good works, ladies and gentlemen. So what we're supposed to be doing while we're here, we're supposed to be supporting our brothers and sisters in these courts. We're supposed to be going to court with them and being the witness. Remember, in the good book, it tells you, you don't have to have a notary, ladies and gentlemen. 2 or more witnesses stating the exact same facts suffices. Your right thumbprint, it's the one and only that exists in the world, is enough to authenticate a document, ladies and gentlemen. If you know how to do it, it's not hard. You take a little bit of ink. I like using red because it's the symbolism of Jesus Christ's blood. And I put it right there on the paper. There's nobody else that has this. For anybody to say that that's not my asseveration is absolutely a frivolous claim, because that's clearly my mark. It's mark, signet, and seals, ladies and gentlemen. mark, signet, and seals. It's all right there. So thanks for joining me. I look forward to seeing you at selfgovernanceu.com. Again, going to make my library available, or the library available. It's so extensive. I can't wait for you guys to have it in your hands. Like I said, I've never had anybody give me a complaint. A number of people have ascertained it at this point. The donation for it, again, is just for my maintenance and upkeep. You have a lifetime membership to the library at that point, and I would encourage you all to download it and store it offline, because the information that is on there, most of it has already been taken from the internet. Okay, it's all in digital format. Most of it has already been pulled. I consider it the burning of the books in London and in the United States, when they started burning the true history and allowing the legislators to write how they were going to indoctrinate us. Remember, in a corporation setting, there is always a lying, looting, pandering, thieving lawyer behind it. Always. Always has been, always will be on the commercial side. There will always be a lawyer on the back side pulling the strings and turning the cogs, ladies and gentlemen, to manipulate the language in such a fashion that it confuses you. Okay? Stand with conviction, and because I'm going to give you this maxim right here. He who contradicts himself shall not be heard. All right? It's a very important maxim. And I catch these lying, looting, pandering, thieving lawyers all the time, perverting the language, manipulating the situation, and turning around and contradicting themselves. And I drop it on them all the time. He who contradicts himself shall not be heard. What do you think, magistrate? I mean, should I listen to somebody who adamantly tells different stories every time he opens his mouth? Well, it's kind of undeniable at this point that he's foiled his claim, that he's brought fraud upon the court, that he doesn't have an affiant here today stating harm, injury, damage, or loss. He doesn't have a man or woman, I should say, that's stating harm, injury, damage, or loss. He's brought a frivolous claim before the court for which relief cannot be granted. Show a cause why I shouldn't be cut a check for, let's just say, $160,000 today. $160,000, which that man should have a checkbook in his back pocket, because after all, he's gambling with the public coffer. He's gambling with the taxpayer, the U.S. citizens' funds and wherewithal and assets within the community. And because he lost this gamble and wasted my time by bringing me in here to defend myself against such a frivolous freaking claim, I should be compensated to the tune of $160,000 for my 15 minutes of time here. Who, as an agent and agency, can say that I'm not worth $160,000 for 15 minutes? Who can say it? None of them. Not a damn one of them. None of them are going to swear in and testify on the pains and penalties. Another fun thing you can do when you walk into court is, everybody here today prepared to raise the right hand and swear in under oath to testify with firsthand knowledge of the facts, only the facts and nothing but the facts today? If nobody else in that room is willing to do that, guess what? You just won your claim. You just won your case. It's dismissed. It's over. Is there a man or woman in this court willing to raise the right hand and provide testimony against I, with firsthand knowledge, stating that I caused him harm, injury, damage, or loss, because my intent here, the only reason I am here today, standing before this alleged court as a man, is to provide remedy. I just diffused everything. I'm not in there to argue. I'm just here to give remedy, however it should be, because we're here to do good works. And if we've injured somebody, it's important that we come forward and take care of our responsibility and be accountable for our actions, words, and otherwise. So if I've harmed somebody, let them come forward. I am prepared today. What do they want? Maybe they don't want FRNs. Maybe they don't want credits on account. Maybe because they know of my skill set, they say, you know what? I'd rather you put a roof on my house. I'd rather you fix my soffits around my house. I'd rather you paint something for me. I've got some drywall issues. Perhaps you could come in here and do a little bit of plumbing for me. Maybe that's what they want for remedy. Who's to say? Think of how many people go through the court system and end up in prison, and the true victim never is compensated for a frickin' thing, but yet the state reaps all the rewards of the bonds, securities, negotiable instruments created over the case. When have you heard a victim actually getting paid out by the judiciary after they create a bunch of securities that are monetized? These bonds are monetized and turned into securities, exchanged on the international stock market. When's the last time you heard a victim get a check from being victimized by a U.S. citizen, which belongs to the property of the United States, which should be independently bonded and insured? When's the last time you've ever heard a victim get a check cut when a police officer murders their family member? Most times, and I can testify to this with firsthand knowledge, I was accosted against my will. And when the good Lord helped me exonerate myself by giving me clarity in my mind, removing the cloud that had been placed upon my brain as I went through their public indoctrination horsepucky, right? And 16 days in solitary confinement, fasting, just drinking water, no cigarettes, no tobacco, no alcohol, no nothing, no food, no nothing. Brought about a bunch of great clarity that can be construed for nothing other than a miracle. Because I got a really thick head, it's hard to get through to me. But somehow he found a way. And when you realize how powerful you are and that what they're actually doing is fabricating crimes using fictional entities, you can walk through these people like a hot knife through butter. But you have to stand with conviction. You cannot waver, ladies and gentlemen. You have to be prepared to lose all your materialistic things because it is easier to thread the eye of a needle with a camel than it is to take a rich man into the gates of heaven. And that's a fact. It's easier if you look and you read that book and you realize that the people Jesus was touching were impoverished. Not spiritually impoverished. They were impoverished with man's belief in what has intrinsic value, right? But when you look at what Jesus was doing, he was going around those people who were allegedly impoverished, blind, couldn't see, leprosy, all these people that struggled. Jesus never reached out and touched the rich man and helped the rich man out, right? He touched the people that were spiritually lacking and needed a little guidance. That's all it is. That's what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be touching our fellow man spiritually and leading them down the correct path because the path is narrow. The gate is narrow, ladies and gentlemen. And you can't be afraid to lose everything. You're not supposed to be a debtor. A debtor is sinful, ladies and gentlemen. So if you believe yourself to be in debt to the bank, right? That's why you can't fight them. That's why you hire a lawyer, because you're indebted and you can't miss a day at work. Because if you miss a day at work, by God, I owe, so off to work I go. You miss one day at work and then you'll take a week to regain that day of lost, quote unquote, dare I say, income. Because most people perceive it to be income when in all actuality, it's even exchange and fair trade to make a living. The things that we know not are what influence and cause us the most harm in our life. It's time to become educated. So I'll talk to you guys soon at selfgovernanceu.com. A land patent class coming up. Again, land patent reaffirms that prior to the notary, 2 or more witnesses sufficed when creating any documentation that need witness. Remember, in a traffic citation, the officer on the side of the road, on the public side of things, is actually involved in securities fraud. He's not reporting the transfer of the security, which is tax evasion. That's publicly. On the lawful side of things, he's detained you against your will. It's false imprisonment, false incarceration. The fact that he's forcing you into contract is a compelled performance, which is unlawful as well as illegal. So there's a number of avenues there. He cannot be the process server and the witness. So there's a lack of due process. Either you have a witness or you don't have a witness, because obviously there's no victim, or you didn't execute the service of process properly. In either case, you lose. It's over. And it's just a matter of ascending of the mind and realizing that. Talking with the clerk of the court, again, really simple. You want to ask to see the magistrate 3 times. If you're denied to see the magistrate 3 times, you're denied due process of law. Because remember, on the traffic citation, it says, on or before such and such date. What are they doing? They're giving you notice and opportunity to come ratify or rectify the situation, claim your securities, however you want to do it. Whether you want to operate in trust or you want to go in there and find out whether or not they actually have what they are required to have in order to bring a claim. And that's why we go to the magistrate. Now, the magistrate, the clerk of the court may say, I am the magistrate. Great. You just met the wonderful wizard behind the curtain. Okay. Now, the question remains is, do you have an affiant that has filled out an affidavit testifying under the pains and penalties of perjury, or their no being no and their yes being yes, that I've caused them harm, injury, damage, or loss, where they live, are they a resident of such and such state, such and such county, what's their address, phone number, so that I can provide remedy. I can reach out to them, because remember, we're always doing things in good faith, with good intention, with good conscience, and for good reason. Those are the teeth in your document. Right there. Those are the teeth. Good faith, good conscience, good reason. Those are the teeth, okay? So thanks again. I look forward to seeing you at selfgovernanceu.com. I really appreciate all your support and help. Again, I'm going to get to work. Thanks again.